The Loud family entered the recovery room as Lincoln was being attended by Dr. Lloyd and a male nurse by having the bandages on his head replaced. Once inside, Lincoln turned his head to face them with an expression of confusion and unsureness. Lincoln said mentally in a retarded tone, pointing at his sisters with his shaky hand. Oh, your parents and sisters are here. Lloyd turned to Lincoln's family. Hi there, we're just changing Lincoln's bandages. Is he doing all right? Rita asked anxiously. I've been analyzing Lincoln's activity since yesterday and he appears to be recovering. A bit very slowly. However, he needs to tend to be more fidgety with himself. Whenever he's nervous or has trouble controlling his arm, the movements from time to time, it is likely due to the damage that is done to his frontal brain lobe, Lloyd explained. I don't quite follow, Rita answered in confusion. Well, you see, the frontal bone lobe of the brain affects the person's behavior, learning, and personality and voluntary movement. And due to the heavy damage that Lincoln's face frontal lobe had took from him when the piece of the fractured skull jamming into it, all four of those characteristics are very heavily impaired, Lloyd answered. Lincoln may sometimes act erratic or show very unusual behavior, such as random fits, maybe even panic. His rationality and sense of recognition are also impaired too, meaning that there won't be so much to distinguish between the reality and fantasy. Irrationality, erratic behavior? Len Jr. questioned, obviously confused. What he means to say is that her brother is unable to rationalize any situations around him properly, and he may not see certain things the way a normal person would. Toddlers often recognize and memorize certain people or objects by appearance, and that is the case with Lincoln here. He's seeing things the way a toddler would see them, but the memory loss seems to be recognized that Lincoln doesn't recognize all of us. If he had all of his memories, he'd probably recognize us quite easily and react to a different way. As you could see, Lincoln just seems confused by looking at us, so it's obvious that he doesn't remember us, Lisa explained. His sisters all watched Lincoln look at Rita and a relief look on his face when he saw her. He still recognized his mom though, Luna said. Ma! Lincoln muttered joyfully, struggling to control the movement of his arms. He held them out towards her, but his expression changed when he glanced back at his legs with a panicked look on his face. Lincoln? Rita asked worriedly as he saw the reaction change. Stuck! Lincoln cried out in panic as he squirmed about, trying to move his legs and feet, but they wouldn't budge. In the process, he started screaming in pain as he moved back. So much that the doctors and nurse had to restrain him. Lincoln's parents and sisters began fearing for this as well as being as they were watching him. Suddenly he started to panic for reasons that they didn't even know. Lincoln, you need to calm down and stop moving around so much. You're going to hurt yourself, Dr. Lloyd urged Lincoln as he held his arms against the bed. Nope. Lincoln yelled in slurred and retarded tone, shaking his head side to side while trying to break free. What's going on? What's wrong with him? Rita asked, starting now to panic. Lincoln doesn't understand that he's paralyzed from the waist down. He's panicking a lot from not able to move his legs. He did this yesterday after all you left. I doubt he ever even knows the paralysis has been given by his mindset sin, Lloyd answered, struggling to calm Lincoln down. No, stop! Lincoln yelled, still shaking his head around. Doc, we may need to sedate him if he keeps this up. His wounds haven't fully healed and he could end up hurting himself from thrashing around like this, the nurse advised. No, let me try and help him, Rita begged, rushing up to Lincoln. Let go of him, doctor. I'll try and calm him down. Dr. Lloyd and the nurse stepped back, allowing Rita to comfort Lincoln, as she took a hold of Lincoln's hands and made eye contact with him. He calmed down for a bit, but still trembled fearfully with a frightened expression on his face. Lincoln, I'm here, sweetie. Please calm down, Rita urged with tears flowing from her eyes. Ma, Lincoln whimpered, glancing down his legs. I know, sweetie, Rita sniffled, holding him softly. It's not your fault, Lincoln. It was an accident. Lincoln didn't appear to understand exactly what was going on, but he seemed to be aware of his mother's sadness and lift up his trembling hands to try to embrace her. Lincoln's sisters began to approach slowly to his bed, including Luan, who walked up to Lincoln with tears in her eyes. Lincoln, do you remember me? Luan stammered, wiping tears from her face. Lincoln turned his attention away from Rita and then released, making eye contact with Luan. The moment he did this, something unexpected happened. Everyone all watched as the expression had changed from confusion to a dismay of look and anger and hatred. Then he let out a growl, and Luan raised his finger at her. You! You! Lincoln yelled in an angry manner, then turned to rush forward with his good hand to try to grab Luan. But Lori rushed up and stopped him. Lincoln, stop! Lori begged him. Shaking his head, he clenched his teeth. Lincoln yelled, No! Hurts me! Ooh, Anne hurts! Luan backed away from the bed, both in shock and sorrow, remembering the way how he looked at her the other day. There was no doubt about it now. Lincoln knew who Luan was and seemed to have the memory of what she did to him. Although Lincoln didn't speak normally or very well, Luan was still able to understand what he was trying to say quite clearly. Lincoln, I'm sorry, I really am, Luan pleaded tearfully, rushing forward and towards and suddenly embracing Lincoln. I know you're very angry at me for what I caused you, and you have every right to be. But please believe me when I say I'm sorry for everything. I am sorry I ended up putting you in the hospital in this state, and I swear I'll never prank you or anyone else again, and I truly mean it this time. I don't know if you understand me, but please forgive me for everything. Lincoln didn't seem to entirely understand due to the fact that the state his mind was in, but he obviously remembered that Luan had done to him, and this clearly made him angry. What Lincoln did next was shocking everyone in the room. He raised a trembling hand up and slapped Luan on the side of her face. Everyone gasped as Luan backed away with the shocked look on the sting on her cheek as she saw Lincoln's impression. He glared at her with a clenched fist and tears in his eyes, and with every sight broke Luan's heart. Lincoln, she whispered sorrowfully with tears running down her face. Hurt me. Lincoln drawled angrily, pointing at her with his good arm, which trembled like crazy. I'm sorry, I know I hurt you, but it was an accident, Luan pleaded, trying to calm him down. No, hurt, Lincoln yelled, shaking his head in anger. Luan just backed away further as Lynn rushed up to the bed to try to calm Lincoln down, but he was no help. Lincoln didn't seem to recognize him due to memory loss, so he just ignored Lynn, and he continued to point at Luan with his angry glare on his face, and shouted both broken words and angry gibberish at her. Seeing as how Lynn was not helping, Rita tried calming him down. Lincoln, please stop this. Luan is very sorry for what she did to you. Can't you understand? Rita pleaded, gently grabbing his cheeks and facing Lincoln towards her. Lincoln slowly calmed back down, but still trembled with anger, in an attempt to get a glance back at Luan, who was now standing in the corner of the room laminating. But Rita held up his head in place and kept his focus slowly on her. Lloyd and the other nurses stood by, in case if Rita lost control of Lincoln. Lincoln, please look at me. Don't look at Luan, just look at me, Rita urged him with tears forming in her eyes. Lincoln, please. She won't hurt you, I promise. Please try to understand me. Lincoln just stared right into his mother's eyes, clearly trying to understand the situation, but it was very hard to do so due to the brain damage. His angry expression changed of that to a nervous and worried child as he saw his mother crying. While Lincoln wasn't able to understand the reasons Rita's sorrow, he knew that something was wrong, and he could tell how sad he had looked. It didn't even take the mind off a toddler to understand it. Ma hurt? Lincoln asked in a worried tone. Rita shook her head and said, No, I'm fine. Just please understand me. Luan isn't going to hurt you ever again, and she says she's sorry for everything she did to you. Can you understand what I'm saying, Lincoln? Stand? Lincoln asked in a retarded tone. Yes, Rita nodded, feeling a spark of hope. Do you understand what I'm saying? Lincoln stayed for a few seconds, and he slowly nodded with a slurred, uh-huh. Rita and the rest of the family felt a slight rush of relief as they heard Lincoln acknowledge her, and so did Dr. Lloyd and the nurse. Seeing how Lincoln was in more control, Lenny stepped forward with her hands behind her back, clearly hiding something. Then she began towards Luan and turned to face Lincoln. Lincoln, Luan has something for you, Lenny said as Luan stepped forward towards her. Luan reached behind Lenny and took something in her hands that Lincoln looked over. His face then controlled from another hate-filled look, which immediately caught the attention of Lloyd and the nurse, Rita. Lynn and the rest of the Lincoln sisters also became worried and suddenly began to lose again. Luan, you... Lincoln growled as Luan approached the bed with her hands behind her back. Miss, you better back off, the nurse warned her. Something about you clearly set him off. He does decide to go violent again. I don't want you getting hurt. I know why he hates me, and I think he still remembers why. And I don't blame him, Luan admitted, stopping next to Lincoln's bed. But I really want to show how sorry I am, and that's why I want to give him this. Lincoln looked about it and was ready to punch Luan, but stopped halfway when Luan showed him what she had been hiding behind her back. It was an old stuffed rabbit, Bun Bun, all stitched up and repaired. Lincoln's angry expression immediately faded and was replaced by a look of surprise and awe and relief moment as his eyes fell upon Bun Bun. Bun? Lincoln stuttered as Luan held the stuffed rabbit out to him. Here you go, Lincoln. It's all fixed, Luan said, handing Bun Bun to Lincoln. Lincoln, what I did to Bun Bun by placing him in that explosive party ball in your room, I'm so sorry that it happened. It was meant to be a prank, but I didn't think he'd get that badly damaged, so Lenny showed me how to sew, and I patched him up. Lincoln held the small rabbit close to his bandaged chest, and moving in the manner as if the lost lover reunited with him. Lincoln also appeared to tear up with happiness as he rubbed Bun Bun softly against the side of his face. Bun Bun, Lincoln said, surprisingly remembering it. Yes, I know you would remember him. Luan replied in relief. Lincoln wasn't so paying attention to Luan at this point. As he held Bun Bun to his bandaged chest lovingly like a mother comforting her baby, a rush of different memories began running through Lincoln's head, still with many gaps between due to the brain damage that he had received. Lincoln held his eyes shut and remembered some of his past memories of Bun Bun. In his mind, he saw himself as a younger 5-year-old again, trembling fearfully on his bed during a power outage and calling for his mother. But when she didn't show up, Bun Bun was there to comfort him and ease his fear, allowing him to fall asleep peacefully. Bun Bun had always been there to help and need the company whenever there was a huge storm or a power outage. Lincoln then remembered some memories of him and Bun Bun during his early childhood, having a few memory gaps here and there. He saw himself sitting next to a bed next to Lori, Luan, Luna, and Lenny, with Bun Bun at the side of the family on the table for his 5th birthday, preparing to blow up the candles on his cake. Close beside him was his parents and young Luna and Luan, all with smiles and joys on their faces. Although Lincoln's mindset was still to a toddler state because of the brain damage, he still remembered parts of the past, and Bun Bun was a big part of it. This small stuffed rabbit that it was always been for him wherever he was scared, alone, or distressed. So he had his sisters. Even though Bun Bun wasn't actually alive, he always been very close to a companion that Lincoln ever since he was a young child, always there to comfort him whenever he was dealing with personal issues or whenever even if his sisters wouldn't understand. While Lincoln no longer remembered those issues, he still remembered Bun Bun all too well, yet there were still many gaps in Lincoln's memory that he just couldn't recall, that he only recovered for a small portion of his memories overnight after seeing Bun Bun, but despite that, Lincoln would never recover all of them due to severely damage done to his brain. However, when someone else was there for him in Lincoln's mind, he saw someone that seemed familiar, yet he couldn't seem to remember who that person was. A boy with black skin and black hair. Lincoln also didn't recognize some of his family members, except Luan and his mother. This boy, who is he? Who are these girls? I don't know them, or do I? Lincoln thought as his memories continued rushing through his head like a train. He saw various places, people, and many other first things that sound familiar, but he just couldn't remember. Yet now, anyway, it didn't even matter much to Lincoln. He was so happy to be united with Bun Bun, and Lincoln remembered seeing Bun Bun destroyed by Luan at one point, but most of the memories on April Fool's Day events were just very fuzzy. All he remembered before waking up in the hospital was being crushed underneath by something big and heavy, but he couldn't remember what it was. Lincoln knew Luan was behind this from all of the memories of her performing pranks on him, but the rest was just fragmented and scrambled. Why did Luan do this? What was I doing? Lincoln wondered in his mind. Then he suddenly saw someone else in his mind. It was a girl with black hair and tan skin, wearing a purple coat, blue shorts, and purple socks. Did he know her? Lincoln could have sworn that he'd seen her before. Known her before? Yet it seemed like he couldn't. And all those memories Lincoln saw of these peoples all seemed too familiar, except he had no idea who they were or where they were seen, and it was beginning to disbumble him. Who is this girl? And who are all these people? Why do I feel that I know them when I haven't ever met them? Lincoln pondered with fractured thoughts, trying so hard to figure out who these mysterious people of his memories were. Lincoln then opened his eyes and came out of his trance when the window to the door to the recovery room opened and a brown-skinned boy entered. It was Clyde McBride. He had a very concerned, worried expression on his face as he saw Lincoln laying in the hospital bed with bandages and his head broken forearm. "Oh, Clyde," Laurie exclaimed as he saw the African-American boy entering the room. "I didn't expect to see you here." Clyde didn't have a love-struck or breakdown over Laurie like he usually did. He just made eye contact with her due to the situation. Instead of looking at Laurie, he had a sort of concern. "Yeah, Lenny called me earlier and informed me about Lincoln's condition," Clyde replied with a glum tone of voice. "Is it true? Is Lincoln brain damaged? Better take a good look, because of the proofs right here," Lana said sadly, nodding over Lincoln, who had just turned his attention to Bun to Clyde. He then eyed the skinned brown boy with a confused look on his face. His boys seemed to be oddly familiar with Lincoln, but he didn't seem to recognize him. All of Lincoln's sisters, who have recognized and grow very worried, had Lincoln really forgotten about his best friend ever since childhood? What if that was the case, and what if he forget Clyde forever? Or he remember him over time as his temporal lobe healed? "This boy, do I know him?" Lincoln thought, as Clyde approached the bed. Lincoln, you still know me, right?" Clyde asked nervously, fearing that Lincoln had forgot about him. The answer that was confirmed when Lincoln said in a retired tone, "Who, you, I don't know you." Clyde's heart sank when he heard Lincoln said that, and his parents and sisters all looked heartbroken as well. They had expected this to happen because of Lincoln's condition. But what they really feared the most was whether or not he had forgotten Clyde forever, or was Clyde some part of the memories that Lincoln would never recover due to the severity of his brain damage. And what if Ronnie Anne and his other friends out there? Would Lincoln be doomed to forget them forever? "No, Lincoln," Clyde said, tearing up with despair. "It's me, Clyde McBride, your best friend. Come on, I know you know me." The clouds could see that Clyde was at the verge of tears and tried to ease his sorrow. "Clyde," Rita said sadly, "I know this is hard for you to accept, but Lincoln doesn't appear to recognize you." No, he can't. He wouldn't," Clyde protested, with tears now visible in his eyes. "It may not be forever, Clyde. Once Lincoln's brain starts to heal, he might remember who you are," Laurie assured him, but still sounding doubtful. How long would that be, Clyde stammered. "We don't know, Clyde. The doctor said it could be a while until his brain fully heals," Laurie answered. Clyde looked over at Dr. Lloyd and asked, "Doc, does that mean he'll remember me over time?" "Lincoln might remember you, but it's too soon to tell. He only seems to remember his mother and his sister Luan," Dr. Lloyd explained, glancing over at Lincoln. "His parents told me everything about they know what he received over his injuries the other day, and judging from the day Lincoln acted just a few minutes ago, he seems to remember some of it. I don't really know how much of Lincoln's memory has been lost or how much of it has he retained, but only time would tell once he recovers." "Just how bad is Lincoln's condition? Will he ever be the same once he was when he fully recovers? I know he's paralyzed from the waist down, but will Lincoln ever be the same person like he was before?" Clyde wondered, still upset over Lincoln's condition. "No, I really wish I could say if that were the case. I'm afraid Lincoln's never going to be the same was before. His mind is a permanent state of mental retardation for the rest of his life, due to the heavy damage done to his brain, which means that he'll have to be cared for the rest of his life as well," Lloyd answered regretfully. "Lincoln will also have to be educated with those very simple basics of living, such as speaking properly, tying his shoes, dressing himself, bathing, using the restroom, and so many other things as well. If he recovers more of his memories, he might be able to remember those things without any problems. And if that happens, Lincoln's mindset in the process might be a little further just currently at now." "How far exactly?" Clyde asked, now intrigued. "I can't really be far for sure on how much it will be processed as of now, but if I had to guess, I'd say maybe about 3 or 4 ages ago as a toddler mindset," Lloyd speculated. "Wait, I thought you said that yesterday Lincoln would be like a toddler forever," Lana reminded. "Yes, I did," Lloyd answered, "but that was actually an error, in which I do apologize. At the time Lincoln had just came out of surgery, it was so difficult to make exact diagnosis. Up till now, I never dealt with a child who received injuries on this scale. Because of that, I had to make the diagnosis upon the severity of Lincoln's brain damage and injuries right down to the CT scans and x-rays. So I wasn't fully sure how to diagnose the state of his mindset at the time. But after I observed and examined Lincoln a bit further, After all, you left last night. I just thought it might be possible mindset to move up to a few years ahead, once he recovers enough of his injuries. Clyde and Lincoln's family looked a bit relieved by this, but they were still upset about Lincoln's mindset, and would never process any further than just a few years. In addition to this, he's still paralyzed from the waist down, so Lincoln would never be bound to walk again. He would still be in the wheelchair for his life. Will Lincoln ever walk again? Clyde asked doubtfully. No, I'm afraid that's just not possible, Lloyd replied regretfully. His spinal cord got severely broken near the waistline, and it was too far damaged to repair surgically. Several of the discs of his broken area of Lincoln's spine were shattered in pieces, so much that it wasn't even possible to have him fixed or healed, not without causing further damage to the spine. So I take that he'll be in a wheelchair forever, Clyde said sadly. Yes, I'm afraid so, Lloyd nodded with much regret. Clyde then glanced back over at Lincoln, who was now fidgeting with Bun Bun in a childish manner and seemed to be fidgeting with himself as well. His sisters also heard him making strange grunting noises as he fidgeted around, both Bun Bun and his own fingers. Link, are you alright? Lynn asked him, reaching out to touch him, but Lincoln suddenly glared up and jolted backwards with a shriek. Ah! Lincoln squealed, and continued to fidget around with himself. Hey, what's his problem? Len wondered worriedly as Lincoln suddenly changed of behavior. Why did he so like that? Lola pointed out at Lincoln's fidgety behavior. He seemed freaked out by what he just touched. Does Lincoln even think I'm trying to hurt him? Lynn asked. You must have startled him, Rita interjected. Lincoln's memory is still very fuzzy, so he probably doesn't remember you quite yet. As far as he's concerned, all of us are strangers to him, or at least I assume Lincoln can see some of us that way. Doc, is there any way for us to know will Lincoln ever remembers? Lynn asked, sounding almost desperate. No, there really isn't. At least not yet, Lloyd replied. There is only one way truly we can know if he fully remembers, depending on how the recovery is. Once Lincoln recovers enough from his injuries, he should be able to remember more of his memories, and he might be able to talk more clearly. But he still occasionally have his speech problems due to the damage done to his brain. So once his brain recovers from the severe bruising and frontal stab wound caused by the piece of fractured skull, Lincoln would be mentally and physically impaired for the rest of his life. How exactly will Lincoln be able to speak? Will he talk that garbled way that he's been doing since he woke up from surgery? Rita asked in concern. I honestly can't be sure, given the circumstances right now, but Lincoln is clearly able to do some complete words that he just witnessed. However, he still not be able to make a form full sentences, Lloyd answered. I'm quite frankly amazed that Lincoln is still even alive even after suffering for such severe internal injuries. Like I said earlier, I would have never treated children who have had severe injuries on this scale, but let alone them surviving this long. How now I never have been so much of a religious man or believed in God for that matter or such, but seeing Lincoln pulled over through this, I seriously have begun questioning my beliefs. So have I, Rita replied, glancing over at Lincoln, who is now fidgeting with Bun Bun and mumbling some gibberish. I still can't understand how a child such as young as Lincoln could have survived after having an accident that he did. It's a miracle that he's still alive, although mentally impaired. My thoughts are exactly, Lloyd agreed. But like I said the other day, even though Lincoln will live, it won't be really living. His mindset may progress up to about 3 years ahead from a toddler's once he fully recovers. No any further than that, he'll never walk again either. Lincoln's age will progressively normal like a normal person, but he'll have the mindset of a child forever. The Louds all looked at Lincoln with sadness in their eyes, including Clyde, who pitied them for all that happened to him, and all because of Luan. Clyde already knew that Luan was to blame since Lenny had told him about it over the phone the other night, but had no idea how badly Lincoln was hurt actually till now. Clyde looked over at Luan with a face filled of hate and disgust for what he had did more to his best friend. He had always known that Luan to be careless when it comes to pranking people, but he never thought that something like this serious could really happen as a result of her carelessness. Sure, Clyde had always expected one of Luan's pranks sprees to be going on in certain points given how reckless she was when performing them, but he never thought something like this serious could occur. And he had never thought if his best friend would end up severely brain damaged and paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. Clyde knew that was a fact, that Lincoln's other friends weren't going to take this very well once they find out. And when he do know, once Ronnie Anne learned that Luan was the cause of the Lincoln's condition, all hell would break loose, and Clyde would not know if Ronnie Anne would actually know about Lincoln's condition yet. But he knew when she said that she'd be on Luan like an angry honey badger. Clyde would not be surprised if Ronnie Anne beats her up to a pulp as well. Luan, how will you could do this to him? Why would you put the drop of fridge on Lincoln? What the hell in the world were you thinking? Clyde angrily demanded to Luan. Luan said nothing, but instead just stared at him with a sad look on her face. Luan intentionally dropped the refrigerator on him. She didn't, Clyde. It was one of the refrigerator's balancing feet that were loose that both caused it to fall on Lincoln, where it hit it after slipping on bacon grease. Luan didn't notice that, so we couldn't blame her entirely, Luna interjected. Maybe if she just checked it before setting up her little prank traps, Lincoln wouldn't be in the scale right now, Clyde shot back. Clyde, please, Lenny spoke with urgently. I know you're angry at Luan, and you have every right to be, but Luna's right. Luan never intended to hurt Lincoln, or anyone else for that matter. Is that so? Well then, let me ask her this. Clyde then turned to Luan with the unpungent stare. Why did you pull another one of your pranks yesterday? You promised you wouldn't do that again. And I know you because Lincoln just told me about that the other day before April Fool's Day, and he said that you agreed never to pull prank on people on April Fool's Day ever again. That stunt after your door accident incident last year? Why did you break that promise? Luan bit her lip, already experiencing Clyde to ask that question, and he had heard that familiar questions and rants about her family and all broken promises about it ending in the pranking sprees since Lincoln's accident. So he was so strong and guilty that he would never be able to do the same thing as well, and he had no doubt that the rest of Lincoln's friends would be asking the same question to Luan. So Luan thought about for a moment what Ronnie Anne would say about this, and what would made her cringe a bit. Luan was pretty sure that Ronnie Anne probably knew about Lincoln's condition, since Lori had already told Bobby about it on the phone several hours ago during the other night. And once he had likely informed Ronnie Anne as well. If anyone wasn't going to take this very well, it would be Ronnie Anne. And Luan had a feeling that she completely ballistic once she found out and state that Lincoln was in. Clyde, Luan began, trying to find the right words to say. I wasn't using my head at the time, and I honestly didn't think that anything would go wrong, so I went ahead with the pranking the whole family again. However, I never intended for Lincoln to get hurt, and that's God's truth. Before anyone could say anything, the door to the recovery room opened and the Loud family turned to see who was entering the room. It was Bobby and Ronnie Anne. Dr. Lloyd and the nurse also turned their attention to them. They weren't expecting to see any other visitors in the recovery room. Luan, however, cowered behind her sisters, worried that Ronnie Anne would get physically hostile with her over Lincoln. Excuse me, who are you two with? The nurse asked with them. Are you an acquaintance of the Loud family by any chance? Lloyd then asked. Yes, I'm Lori's boyfriend, Bobby, Bobby answered. Ronnie Anne is my sister and Lincoln's girlfriend. Lori told us about what happened with Lincoln the other day, and we both came down to see if he was okay. Okay, right away. Let's just see how he's doing. I see, Dr. Lloyd replied, glancing briefly at Lincoln. Well, he's stable now, but he'll need a lot of time to recover from his surgery. And now I don't know if the Loud Lincoln's parents or sisters have told you this yet, but I regret to inform you that he suffered a serious brain damage that had permanently paralyzed from the waist down due to severe spinal fracture near his waistline. Yeah, we do know about it. Lori filled me in all the details. Bobby nodded with a sad look on his face. Doc, is it really true that I have been told? Is Lincoln really going to have a mindset of a toddler for the rest of his life? Ronnie Anne asked fearfully. I originally thought that would be the case, but no, I don't believe so, Dr. Lloyd answered. I never treated a patient with this many injuries, such as severe as Lincoln's, let alone see them as his last this long. And because of that, I wasn't sure if it would be possible for Lincoln to recognize his surroundings, let alone speak. But he's actually pulled through it much better than I could ever predicted. Does that mean Lincoln will be alright? Ronnie Anne asked, her hopes slightly perking up. Well, the good news is that Lincoln's mindset will recover about 3 or 4 years ahead of a toddler's mindset once his brain cells heal. The bad news is that his mindset won't progress any further than that, and that he'll be in the wheelchair for the rest of his life. I tried my best to repair the damage done to his spine, but it was just too serious. Also, Lincoln will still have a few gaps of his memory even after his brain recovers, so he may not recall or remember certain events that happened to him in the past. So he currently may not remember who some of you are, either, Lloyd explained. Ronnie Anne then felt the spark of hope that fade away when Lincoln said that, or when Lloyd said that. The thought of Lincoln forgetting her forever was heartbreaking, and Bobby seemed to share that same feeling as well. Lincoln was like a brother to him, and having Lincoln to forget him and be losing him altogether. Ronnie Anne rushed up to Lincoln's bed in a hurry to see how he was doing, and Lincoln was currently fidgeting with his stuffed rabbit Bun Bun, and he could make a soft, low grunting sounds as he did so. Ronnie Anne could have sworn that Lincoln was talking, but it was impossible to tell since it was practically mumbling. Lincoln also had a very passive expression on his face, with a small hint of glee as he toyed his favorite stuffed rabbit, not paying attention to what was going on around him. Ronnie Anne slowly approached Lincoln, fearing that he wouldn't recognize her, and then he tapped her on the bed to get his attention. "Lincoln?" Ronnie Anne asked, her face filled with worry and concern. Lincoln stopped what he was doing and then turned to face Ronnie Anne, who had a look of fear and anticipation, and simply just stared at her with an empty expression on his face. Lincoln then moved his head up and then slowly down, as if he was scanning Ronnie Anne's appearance, and then his eyes seemed to widen a bit as he did. "You're not," Lincoln said slowly in a slurred tone. Ronnie Anne's eyes widened as he heard him speak, but she had no idea what he was trying to say. Everyone else seemed to be a bit confused to what Lincoln was saying. "What is that? What are you trying to tell me?" she asked Lincoln, her heart pounding. "Not hurt me," Lincoln slurred, this time sounding more nervous. Ronnie Anne didn't know what to make of this, but she could really tell that Lincoln was somehow afraid of her. Ronnie Anne then wondered at first why, remembering what Dr. Lloyd had said about Lincoln's recovery problem. The terrible thought came to her. Lincoln had just forgot about their relationship? If so, did he mean that he forgot Ronnie Anne as well? Not that he could have been. "I don't understand." Ronnie Anne reached out towards Lincoln. "Lincoln, what are you saying?" The moment that she touched Lincoln's bandaged forearm, he suddenly jolted backwards and let out a panicked cry. His expression was now a look of both fear and dread. "No, you, not, Lincoln yelled, trying to hide under the bed covers, but it was hard for him to do it because of his bruised, busted forearm and paralysis. "Sis, you better back away. You seem to be scaring him," Bobby advised cautiously. "Well, what's going on? Why is he suddenly so frightened?" Ronnie Anne stuttered in confusion. I don't know," Bobby answered. "It might have to do something with his condition, or possibly his memory." "Is it possible that he doesn't recognize her?" Ronnie Anne asked. "That might be the case," Bobby guessed. "Or maybe he does recognize you in some way, but doesn't seem to at the same time." "What? That doesn't make any sense," Ronnie Anne said, rather confused. "How could he recognize me and then not recognize me at the same time? That's ridiculous." "I think Bobby was just trying to say that Lincoln only remembers certain parts about you," Ronnie Anne, Lisa answered. "What do you mean by that?" Ronnie Anne asked her. "From what I just analyzed from Lincoln's behavior and reactions, he apparently has to have a few memories of you, and I can possibly and probably imagine those memories of him that times you bullied him. That's most likely the reason why Lincoln suddenly freaked out the way you did when you came close to him," Lisa explained. Ronnie Anne felt her heart skip a beat when she took a look at what Lisa just said. She didn't want to believe that it was true, but the facts were right in front of her. Lincoln was afraid of Ronnie Anne, and his reactions confirmed it. Ronnie Anne was heartbroken by a horrible revelation, and Luan just looked as upset. "This is just too awful," Luan thought. The feeling urged her to sob her eyes out again. Lincoln's mindset was all messed up, and it's all because of my stupid pranks. Lincoln just managed to only pull the covers up halfway with his one arm, and his head was still visible. A frightened expression was still on his face. Ronnie Anne could only step backwards as Lincoln trembled in a fright, feeling deep sense of loss and sadness. Lincoln had clearly lost his memories of him because he was and Ronnie Anne as a boyfriend and girlfriend, retaining only horrid memories of Ronnie Anne bullying him and tormenting him. Lincoln also didn't appear to recognize Bobby either, because that he approached the hospital bed and tried to comfort Lincoln, but he just stared at him as if he was a complete stranger to him. At this point, everyone all began fearing for the worst for Lincoln regarding his memory, including Dr. Lloyd. Would be doomed to forget all those the ones he knew and cared about? Would it be possible for to regain all of his memories of them at all? No one knew. All they could do was hope. Lisa, however, was more bound to be determined than ever to find a way to fix her brother's crippled memory, but she still needs to know more about the extent of Lincoln's cranial injuries to do that. So she began forming a plan in her mind.